Remembering, Top of the Pops and the show's most iconic performances. Before there was MTV or VH1, there was Top of the Pops. Every week, the BBC showcased and broadcast the latest and greatest music from the Western world in front of a studio audience. And while the show's history behind the scenes may be messy, what it did for music and for culture is undeniable. Some of the defining moments in music history, such as David Bowie presenting Ziggy Stardust to a large audience for the first time and the members of Nirvana throwing away their airtime in protest, occurred on the set of Top of the Pops. What was Top of the Pops? For over 4 decades, starting on January 1, 1964. The British Top of the Pops television program had its finger on the pulse of popular music. Some of the biggest acts in history graced its stage, and it even showcased some music legends before the rest of the world had caught on. Why was it important? Top of the Pops set the standard for popular music in much of the world. At its height, Top of the Pops aired in more than 120 countries and was a surefire route for up-and-coming artists to receive worldwide recognition overnight. Proving grounds. Many of the greatest acts to come out of Europe and the United States passed through TOTP in their infancy, and used the televised stage as a place to prove their musical and performative appeal. Every Thursday evening, from 1964 to 2006, Top of the Pops would broadcast to countless homes and television sets. Every Thursday evening to provide the populace with unforgettable performances delivered by the best artists anyone had heard. And even the best artists anyone hadn't heard yet.
Dusty Springfield. On the first day of 1964, Top of the Pops premiered on BBC with none other than Dusty Springfield. Springfield was already an icon of the 1960s, and paved the way for Top's next guest of that momentous January night.
Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones, the crowned kings of rock and roll, took to the stage to perform their hit song I Wanna Be Your Man after Dusty stepped off. With a premiere lineup like that, it's easy to see why Top was broadcast for so long.
Sonny and Cher. Power couple Sonny and Cher performed one of their biggest hits, I Got You Babe, on Top of the Pops in 1965. The song would go on to become certified gold, selling over 1 million copies.
The Who. Troublemaking classic rock band The Who first appeared on Top of the Pops in 1965. Shortly after the release of their first record, the band put on one of the wildest shows Top viewers had seen, and famously proceeded to trash their dressing room, costing them their entire performance fee and fines. The Beatles. Of course, any BBC music show wouldn't be complete without a visit or two from the Beatles, easily the most successful band in history. The Fab Four's 1966 lip-synced performance of the newly released hit, Paperback Writer, has become an iconic moment in television history.
Aretha Franklin. The Queen of Soul herself, Aretha Franklin, appeared on Top of the Pops in 1968 following the success of Sing a Little Prayer for You.
The Doors. The enigmatic and hypnotic psychedelic rock band The Doors performed on Top of the Pops in 1968. The band, known for their frequent disagreements with the law and authority, famously put on a purposefully uninspired show in order to protest the commercialism of the program.
Elton John. Elton John graced the Top set with his virtuosic piano playing and soaring voice no less than 105 times, with his first performance airing in 1970.
The Jackson 5. The family supergroup that introduced the world to the likes of Michael Jackson. The Jackson 5 made their Top debut in 1970. They were one of the rare acts of the early days of the show that were allowed to sing live, without a backing track.
John Lennon and Yoko Ono. John Lennon made music history in 1970 when he performed on Top with Yoko Ono. Just months before the Beatles officially announced their disbandment, the performance was not only an omen for what was to become of the biggest rock bands in the world, but it also gave the world a glimpse into what they could expect from John Lennon's solo career, which was tragically cut short only 10 years later.
T-Rex? For a short time in the early 1970s, T-Rex looked like they were going to be the next big thing. Their first appearance on Top, in 1971, is widely considered to be the day glam rock was born. No one had seen a rock band, fresh out of the 1960s, dressing in the glittery, flamboyant attire donned by frontman Mark Bolan. The performance would inspire a whole decade of velour-clad rock stars.
Rod Stewart. Londoner Rod Stewart performed for the first of many times in 1971, showcasing his new hit single Maggie May.
David Bowie. Right behind T-Rex's historic performance was David Bowie's 1972 performance of Starman, the song that introduced the world to Ziggy Stardust. It was one of the defining moments of Top of the Pops, and of pop music at large. Before his Top performance, Bowie was quietly sliding into obscurity, but afterwards he was one of the biggest stars of the 1970s.
Bee Gees, the popular disco group especially known for their hit 1977 single Stayin' Alive. The Bee Gees first appeared on Top of the Pops long before they reached such stardom. The trio of brothers first appeared in 1972.
Queen? After releasing 2 albums to a lackluster reception, legendary rock band Queen finally burst into the limelight with 1974's Sheer Heart Attack. The band performed the album's single Killer Queen on Top that same year, and they continued to soar higher and higher until Freddie Mercury's death in 1991.
Kate Bush. When Kate Bush introduced her debut record, the 1978 masterpiece The Kick Inside, her alien, strangely fascinating voice and musical style captivated the world. Bush performed the album's single Wuthering Heights 5 separate times on Top in 1978 alone.
The Clash. The Clash never actually performed on Top of the Pops, refusing to give in to commercialism despite the pleas of the producers. However, the band's 1980 hit Bank Robber was too big not to play, so the producers instead put their dance troupe, Legs & Co., on it. The dancers put on a fascinating and hilarious interpretive performance to the tune of the hit song. And the performance has gone down as one of the strangest moments in Top history.
Culture Club. One of the catchiest songs of the early 1980s, Do You Really Want to Hurt Me, was performed by Culture Club in 1982. This performance was also the world's first introduction to one of the most subversive characters in music, Boy George.
Depeche Mode. One of the most formative acts of the rapidly emerging new wave scene in England was, of course, Depeche Mode. They first appeared on Top in 1981, following the release of their debut record Speak and Spell.
New Order. After the tragic death of Joy Division bandleader Ian Curtis, the remaining members of the band formed New Order, arguably the biggest new wave band of the 1980s. Following the huge success of their 1983 single Blue Monday, they made Top history by becoming the first band to perform completely live, without the help of a backing track. This was the band's idea, not the show's. And when the performance sounded terrible due to the sound team's lack of preparedness, it very obviously delighted the band members on stage.
The Smiths? Legendary indie group The Smiths, headed by the incorrigible Morrissey, made their first ever television appearance on Top in 1983 before their first record had even came out. The performance marked the beginnings of long and massively successful careers for all of the band members.
Blur. Blur was introduced to the world in 1991, when they first appeared on Top of the Pops. The song they performed, No Other Way, proved to be a resilient, chart-topping success.
Nirvana. After New Order's 1983 live performance fiasco, the show was determined not to let any other acts perform live. When, in 1991, Nirvana came onto the show insisting they play their hit Smells Like Teen Spirit live, the producers forbade it. Nirvana fought back by making a farce out of their performance, with Kurt Cobain singing in a comically deep and off-key voice, bassist Krist Novoselic barely touching his instrument, and drummer Dave Grohl just acting generally crazy behind his drum set. While embarrassing for the producers, the performance has become one of the most iconic moments of Top.
Oasis. Brit rock kings Oasis made their Top of the Pops debut in 1994. Taking a note from previous bands forced to use a backing track by switching places on stage so that no one knew who was singing or playing what.
The Spice Girls. The Spice Girls became the most successful girl group of all time, shattering expectations after they were formed as a simple experiment to see if there was a way to rival the boy bands that were so popular at the time. Their long-awaited debut on Top, in 1996, was an instantly iconic moment in the long history of Top of the Pops.
Well, that's all, folks.
That's my line.
Step aside, babe. Let a star do this. That's all!
That's all, folks!